Hello, folks, and welcome to today's show with myself, James Davidson. No Michael Burney today, thankfully. We've Keane Johnson, of course, joining us, and we're going to have Jason Byrne of the Irish Sun on also. Just a reminder, we have a huge show coming up later this week in association with East Clare Fitness and Inside Nutrition. It's going to be down in Scariff, County Clare. We're going to have a huge All-Ireland preview night with Barry Murphy, Mike Mack, Cyril Farrell, Niall Moore, and Tommy Guilfoyle, Shane McGrath, and myself and young Burney will be down there. A reminder that today's show is brought to you by OrganRetro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Keane, we had a fine weekend of Gaelic football. Finished, obviously, Donegal 15 points, Galway 114. The other semi-final, Armagh needed extra time, but they beat Kerry by 2 points, 118 to 116. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, no, it's a great weekend. Good games in the football. England lost and Argentina won another Cup of America. So I was happy out anyway. As a neutral in the football, it was just good to get two games because some of the quarterfinals weren't great, and Gaelic football was getting hammered a bit, and two good crowds as well. I think the crowd yesterday was bigger than Saturday, but it was just good to get. It was over 120,000 maybe between both games. So that was a positive anyway, because with the Limerick Cork game, it really overshadowed the football last week. So it was good to kind of get two good games and hopefully a good final as well, because Galway and Armagh have kind of got a new rivalry over the last couple of years, and it's always been tight. So, it's positive all around.
Yeah, and we have to give kudos to Down as well. They won the Tailteann Cup final against Laois, and look at this slick jersey here. It's absolutely class. But you mentioned the attendances there. There was 67,000, just over, maybe plus two people there yesterday. I was at Donegal and Galway. There was 55,548 there on Saturday. Couldn't make that game club fixture at the same time. So let's start off with that game. That was a cracker.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was probably better than yesterday. I thought yesterday's game fell a bit small, a bit flat in the second half, but I think the massive kind of learning for teams over the weekend is you're only as good as your conversion rate. Like you can do whatever you want from your own goal up to the other team's 45. Like, we're going to talk about kickouts here, substitutions, matchups, everything. Like, if you can't put the ball over the bar consistently for the whole game, it's going to be a huge problem for you. Like, Donegal yesterday in the first half were 10 from 13, 76%. In the second half, they were 5 from 14, 36%. Kerry in the first half were 10 from 12, 83%. And from half time to the end of extra time, Kerry were 7 from 24, 29%. So for Kerry and Donegal, the two teams that lost, their shooting efficiency just fell off a cliff. And I don't know, can you put it down to tired legs or, just the pressure coming on? But that's essentially where the games were won and lost.
Do you know what? I totally agree with your point that it is about staying cool when you're under pressure. Like in the second half, I remember Darragh Boyle, he was making a fine impact, and then he shot under pressure from a tight enough angle, and it went just wide at a crucial moment. And I was like, that was probably the wrong decision at the wrong time. That was late on in the game. It was 113 to 15 points at that stage, and it was on a very bad run for Donegal. So at the 47th minute, they drew it 14 points to 111. For the rest of the game, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 shots and scored just one. And in a lot of situations, it was panicked shots. But the funny thing? In the first half, Galway had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 miss kicks when they were going for scoring opportunities. So it was Liam Silk, Shane Walsh, Robert Finnerty, John Maher, and one other, which was Paul Conroy, and it ended up in the net. Sometimes your luck is in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like the 3 goals over the weekend were all miss-hit shots. Sometimes they're nearly more dangerous than trying to manufacture a goal. But yeah, there was one miss kick where kind of Rob Finnerty kind of robbed it around the back. It was going out, and he put it back in. But yeah, Galway kind of got the bounce of the ball as well. I think there was 2 unbelievable blocks by Donegal players as well in the second half, and Galway just picked up the break and put it over. So Galway kind of got a small bit over the green. There was a really tight call with the pick off the ground with Kieran Thompson as well. I didn't really know what to make of that. It looked like, I don't know if you've seen the replay on TV, but it looked like it just touched the ground when he had it in his hand. And I don't know how the ref could have seen that from where he was, but those are the margins, I suppose.
Yeah, and he had the huge screen then up. If he wanted to, he could look around a second later, and he probably did. He probably caught it in the corner of his eye and saw it. Now, I happened to be jotting down a note of whoever it was picking up the ball at the time, and the guy beside me, who was a Donegal journalist, I didn't actually catch his name, but he said, "Oh, the ball bounced." So the referee can look up and see it. And I remember once there was a famous incident, I think around 2011, Meath were playing Dublin, and I'm almost sure that the referees checked checked the screen and changed and adjusted, and then they sort of suggested it was the linesman who advised the referee. But at the time, I was like, the referee's clearly looking up at the screen here and has changed this decision.
Did they stop showing replays or stuff like that in Croke Park for a while? They're kind of back doing a half and a half now, are they?
It's kind of, I felt that it was always the contentious ones that they weren't showing, especially if there was like a red card incident or a goal that wasn't allowed or something like that.
Yeah.
Because who knows, maybe it could kick off. Like I came out, so I'd done some of the media, the press conferences and all that after Limerick against Cork last week. And there was a Cork and a Limerick lad boxing the head off each other in front of the Croke Park Hotel. Honestly, I came out and one lad, pushed the other lad over the bonnet of a car and he was taking a pop at him.
Yeah, I was actually up on the terrace that day as well, and like the terrace is a bit different because boys drinking cans or whatever, but the guards took a lot of people off the terrace as well, like, so it was getting feisty.
So like the point that I'd be getting to with that is saying that, well, I can kind of understand, even though it ruins it for a lot of us, there are people who are going to be, a little bit tipsy or whatever, and they're going to take it too far.
Yeah.
So you can kind of half understand.
Yeah, I suppose if you're at a game though, and you're just loving the game, you'd love to see the replay. Like it's really disappointing that you can't see what happened again. Like, yeah.
So just in terms of that game yesterday, I mean, at times, like, you're there, 67,000 people, and at times you could hear a pin drop because a team would build up, the other would sit back, and it was almost like, okay, we're going to have to wait for a while for something to happen here.
Mm.
And the proposal around having 3 players up in one half of the field.
Yeah.
There times actually when, and I'm going to pick Galway as an example, that they might have left 2 upfield themselves. And even still, it was a slow build-up. So I'm wondering, is 3 even enough? And maybe I mentioned this to you a few weeks ago, Keith, but I think the best way to do it in terms of, like, people are like, well, how do you make sure the 3 lads stay up and that there isn't a bit of like someone's chasing someone back and they don't have 3 up the pitch? I think it's just going to have to be a case that 3, or I'd say even 4 players have to stay up there, but just wear an armband. And if someone else wants to move up to the forward line, pass them the armband. And if someone happens to come out of the pitch, it's a penalty to the other team. It was stupid to come out because you need really, really harsh rules. But I wasn't blown away by Donegal Galway as a spectacle.
Mm. Yeah, like I thought it was kind of brave from Galway to try and even leave the 3 up. But I think it was a massive contrast kind of styles in the first half. Like Galway were killing Donegal on long kickouts. Like every time the ball went over the top, Galway were in. And then Galway were actually coming off the Donegal kickouts, so they were retreating. And like Donegal are really good at them slow attacks, and every time they came forward, they got a shot away. Like, they were 10 points from 13, as we said. So, it was a really kind of contrast, and I was surprised that Donegal didn't change from stop pressing the kickouts. They only done that in the second half, and like, because Galway really struggled to break them down in the first half. So I don't know if that was, they didn't realise it, or they only got in a half time to kind of reset. But I don't know. Jason will probably give us a better insight there.
Yeah, Jason, what was your thoughts on it? I mean, by the way, recently a dad, so congrats, Jason. That probably hasn't changed life at all.
No, not really. Not really. She arrived on Thursday morning. I was like, oh God, just don't arrive when I'm up in Croke Park. So later, she was born in Galway too, so she's a happy woman today. But anyway, I just kind of got in the end of the chat there, lads. Like, I think you're dead right there when you're on about the kickouts game. Like, and I actually wasn't working yesterday. I was watching the game in Hull 16 with my dad, just, give an interesting, different perspective, especially from the kickouts point of view. In fairness to Conor Gleeson, he's had his fair share of critics, but like his long kicks yesterday were outstanding. I thought he was just absolutely spot on. And Donegal's kind of press didn't cost them coming down that stretch in the second half. I don't know what happened to Donegal in those last kind of 20 minutes or so. They just kind of really lost their way. They were taking lots of pot shots and dropping shots short. Galway just kept going about their business. Like, Donegal's mantra all year has just been about sticking to the game plan, but they didn't really do that in the final 10 minutes, whereas Galway kind of did, and they played with such great patience. I thought John Maher was massive coming down the stretch in those last 15-20 minutes. And every time he got the ball, Donegal found it so hard to kind of deal with his sheer physicality, and that's the point he got was absolutely massive as well. I thought it was a big turning point. Before, obviously, when Kieran Thompson got blown for that free for on the ground, and Donegal were absolutely incensed by that. But I think Brendan Colley did make the right call when you looked at the replay. Like, there was just very slight touch. Like, it's a very tough one. Like, but there was a very slight touch on the ground. Kieran had to, stretch out and try and do the Superman thing and try and catch that ball. And he did catch it cleanly in midair, but just it came down for that split second. Like, it's, I'm sure there's plenty of other referees that could have waved it on, but a massive one for me. It was kind of war of attrition, wasn't it? Like, it was a very interesting game. Like, I thought Michael Langan was exceptional at midfield, but Liam Silk, what a difference he made coming down the stretch for Galway as well. He kind of really showed how much of a loss he was to Pádraig Joyce last year when he took the year out to go to New Zealand. I thought he was exceptional because, in fairness to Brendan McCauley, done an exceptional job, and Damien Comer holding him scoreless. And I thought when Donegal lost Owen Van Galler as well, 10-11 minutes into the second half, I thought they lost a lot of impetus there from his kind of runs from deep that he loves going on. And I don't think, I know Jim McGuinness was saying straight after the game that there's no such thing as year one and how disappointed they were, and that's absolutely right. But I think anyone from Donegal, if you told them this time 12 months ago they'd be Ulster champions and they would have been in All-Ireland semi-final, I think they would have said you were absolutely cream crackers because things were that low. So, from a glass half full point of view from Donegal, I think they'll be absolutely delighted. But it's some All-Ireland, it was some weekend of football, lads. After such a dour championship in many parts coming up to this one, but Galway taking out Dublin was obviously massive. But that weekend of football we're after seeing was just exceptional. Croker basically full on both days. The atmosphere, the four teams involved, what the supporters brought to it, everything. I have to hand it to the Galway supporters yesterday as well. They really outnumbered Donegal. They really got behind them and they really kind of drove their team over the line. And I think that can be said from the Armagh supporters the day before as well. And two cracking All-Ireland finals coming up now, lads, between the hurling and the football. It's brilliant. There's been a lot of matches played to get here in a very short space of time, but this is what it's all about. And, two great finals are upon us now.
Yeah, Jason, just because we've already talked about the score and efficiency of Donegal, by the 55th minute, Donegal had hit their sixth shot short, as in drop short. And I'm including one where Kieran Thompson palmed that he was under pressure and it ended up dropping to, I can't remember if it was the keeper or defender on the line. But is it decision making? How can they go from 75% shooting up until about the 47th minute to about 15% or 12% for the rest of the game? What do you think happened?
I don't know. I don't know. Was it just the pressure? Maybe a bit of an experience there as well. You have to remember, I'd say Paddy McBurdy and Ryan McHugh were among the only two players in the field who've played in an All-Ireland semi-final before. Off the top of my head, I could be wrong on that. Hugh McFadden was on the bench that day against Dublin 10 years ago as well. Maybe just that lack of big game experience coming down the stretch. And someone made an interesting point yesterday as well that, as tested as Donegal were in Ulster and as tested as they were in the opening group stage game against Tyrone, they then had a absolute turkey shoot against Clare, and they had a fairly comprehensive day at the office against Louth, which still left them plenty to work on. Whereas Galway had come through some absolute grillers from the Connacht final against Mayo. They got out of jail against Sligo. They got out of jail against Westmeath. They had that massive game against Armagh where they kind of threw away a lead again and ended up drawing and finishing in second place. And then, to take Dublin out of the equation for them was just huge. So they had all those real battles coming into it, and they were really battle hardened to come into it. And I think it was an interesting point coming into yesterday too. And it might be some of the reasons why Donegal kind of lost the way in those last 10 minutes. It's really hard to put the finger on it. Because they defended so well and they restricted, they definitely restricted Galway shooters a lot for the bulk of the game. So it is really hard to put your finger on it. Some of those shots were just heartbreaking to see them dropping short, and a couple of the wides at the end too when they kind of needed a goal. It's really hard to put your finger on. Maybe just a mixture of nerves, but a lack of big game experience coming down the stretch, and maybe not having been tested as much as they would have liked in a couple of the games beforehand. I'm not sure, Shane. Someone else may tell me that's all hogwash and come up with some other theory. I'm not sure, but that's my take on it.
Cian, if you were told beforehand that Damien Comer would only get one shot off, and he'd have a relatively tough day at the office, that Shane Walsh would get a point from play, that both of these lads would be taken off, that Cillian McDaid, former Footballer of the Year nominee, did some nice stuff, but he didn't completely take over the game in any way, shape, or form. And Rob Finnerty, he got a couple of points, scored a couple of frees, but none of them really absolutely, lit the game up. You would think surely they're not going to win this All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, and that's nearly been a trend all year for Galway. Shane Walsh kind of only hit form the last day against Dublin for a while. Comer had a great game against Mayo, but over the course of the year, they have been dogged by injuries, but now you're wondering, is it a blessing in disguise? Because you look at the depth they have and the amount of players that came on, like Jason mentioned, Liam Silk there. He was having a tough time with Oisin Gallen for a while. And then, I don't know, did they move Johnny McGrath on to Gallen? Or was that because Liam Silk then got up the pitch and got 2 points? Just from watching it on telly, I was wondering, did they move Liam Silk? And he's been a massive plus coming back from travelling last year. And even Kieran Malloy off the bench, John Maher. They just have serious size around the middle of the field, Cian Darcy. And I think you have to give Galway credit because they've got now so many holes this year. They were behind against Sligo, behind against Mayo in injury time, behind against Dublin, and even again yesterday they came out on top. But I think they really took away from Donegal's running game yesterday. They never really let them get that going because they came off the kickouts and kind of made it that kind of stalemate that you were talking about, Shane. That's not maybe as exciting, especially in the second half, because both teams were conceding kickouts. There's only 10 minutes where there was no score from either team in the second half. But if I suppose, you're looking at Donegal over the course of the year and even the last day, Morgan scored 5 points from play. I think he had 1 shot yesterday. Ryan McHugh scored 3 points from play the last day. He had no shot the last day. Owen Van Gallagher went off injured. So I think you have to give credit to Galway as well that they really took away one of Donegal's main weapons.
And just further in that point about some of the key players for Galway not producing 10 out of 10 displays. They still contributed for sure, Jason. But of the lads who got All-Stars in 2022, Liam Silk, he had a very good performance. Comer and Walsh both got All-Stars that year. Relatively quiet. Cillian McDaid, along with Walsh, nominated for Footballer of the Year. John Daly couldn't even get into the starting team as well. So it just shows you that if the lads who all got All-Stars a couple of years ago, none of them are totally taking over the game. Geez, the quality, the spread of quality they have has to be unreal.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to attribute back to maybe during the winter, Shane, when they had so many injuries, and Porrick needed players like Johnny McGrath and Sean Mulcairn to step up and stand up and be counted. Even the likes of Cian Darcy, Tom O'Kilhan there, all these boys have made massive contributions because the savage training that they'd done in the winter when they had such a vast casualty list really brought them on so much. Galway looked terrible in some of those league games. I was at their league game against Dublin at Pearse Stadium, and I got my hands on their casualty list after the game, and in fairness, it was shocking. Porrick Joyce must have been tearing his hair out, being unable to get so many big heavy hitters in the field, and they looked so far out of their depth. But talk about getting it right for the championship, and when it did look like he had all his bodies back for the Connacht final, he loses Comer again, he loses Walsh again, he loses Sean Kelly. But all these others have just totally stood up. And I must say, I'm absolutely delighted for Paul Conroy and the season he's had, given that injury that he had when he had that triple leg break even against Kerry, I think it was in 2018. To come back and get to the level that he's at now at 35 has just been absolutely phenomenal. He doesn't always have the best game, but the influence that he's had over the course of the season has just been absolutely remarkable, and he's really driven them on as kind of a silent leader, and I'm just delighted for him as well. But those lads that would have been fringe players 2 years ago, the way that they've stood up and filled the gap when Joyce had so many injuries has just been phenomenal. I think I do believe they were put through savage training in Loch George over those winter months, and that's really bore the fruits of it now to be back in an All-Ireland final, and they have a massive chance of winning it. And as you said, those big star performers, when they haven't been lighting it up, it's I think Johnny McGrath's just been exceptional. Like, and I think he's nailed on all-star now at cornerback. I think he's just been phenomenal. I've watched a lot of their games in the championship, and he's just really, really stood up. He's just absolutely fearless. And the likes of him, Sean McCarron as well, at full back, like he had that horrible injury too, and to come back to this level, like Joyce has got that out of so many of his players, and I think that's just been a huge reason why they're going to be marching behind the Tailteann band in just under 2 weeks.
I found it so strange now that you mentioned Sean Mulcairn, the time that he was about 14 yards out, just decided at 14, and he could have palmed the ball over the bar. And I hate, obviously, the palm score anyway. I believe he turned back, and then they had a turnover when he tried to pass to somebody. I can't remember who turned it over, but just as you bring him up. But Paul Conroy, 35, Shane Walsh, 31, Conor Gleeson, goalkeeper, obviously he can last a good while longer, 31, Comer, 30, Johnny Heaney, 30. Keane, there's a lot of players that, as selector John Kincannon said afterwards, they're probably getting that bit older. So, like I'll just read out what he said. It's up to us to keep the lads' feet on the ground. The experience of 2 years ago should help. We were all new to it 2 years ago. It's our second All-Ireland final in 3 years, but it's a totally different team. You could say it's a new full back line, a lot of new players, a lot of experience still there, but you could see against Donegal that we didn't rely on the older players. Like, it's getting close to last chance saloon for some of those lads.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and like to be honest, I thought they missed their chance in 2022. Like after that game, I suppose there was kind of people saying just Galway can build from here and that, but personally, I thought they missed the chance of a lifetime that day because that game was there for them against Kerry. I think it was 2016 in the end, but like there was a free there towards the end where John Daly was, it was very dodgy and Kerry just got out. But as we seen yesterday, Shane, you like saying it the whole time. It's not a great Kerry team. To be fair to you, you got that one right. But look, it is. It's a massive chance for Galway the next day. And like, how many times have they played Armagh over the last couple of years? Like, they drew in the round robin stage this year. Played them in the league. Was it last year? The round robin in Leitrim last year as well in the neutral venue. I think Armagh win by a point that day, and then they had that classic in 2022 as well. So it's going to be an unbelievable game. And I think Pádraig Joyce, this is 5th year maybe there with Galway now, and Kieran McGeeney's 10. Like, so maybe getting rid of the manager after a year or two isn't the right thing to do. You have to be careful what you wish for sometimes.
I actually used to do a column for both of them. So for a little while for the AIB GA side, Pádraig Joyce was doing one, and so was Kieran McGeeney. This was at slightly different times. But I remember doing a piece, and like you've dealt with him a lot, Jason, but I was doing a piece with Geezer, and we did, we spoke for maybe 20 minutes, and then I wrote a piece which could have been 1,000 words. So I sent it to him, he read it, he called me, he said, those are the things I said. So everything you wrote down is what I said, but I don't feel it comes across the way I want it. So what he did is he went and then wrote it himself, and I think it could have been like 5,000 words. So, just went through it, just sub-edited or whatever and put it up. Like, he wanted to make sure it came across the way, he intended. And then I was just also thinking about the Pádraig Joyce, and I did several pieces with him. And at the time, this was before he took over, and I think Kevin Walsh is probably still in the post. He was talking about how he would like to keep 4 lads up top. And then, that kind of struck me when I was reading his quotes a little bit earlier. And he says, I was probably a bit naive when I came into the job. This is from over the weekend, saying we'd play fancy football. We did for a long time, but we had to try and shore up our defence. That's down to the work Cian O'Neill and John Divley have done with the lads. They're well structured. But you look at what's in there, Johnny McGrath, Jack Glynn, they're not massive giants, Sean Fitzgerald too. They're young lads who came in and they're doing outstanding. To a man, they're playing serious football. So it's pleasing. It always gives you a great chance when you're not conceding big scores. So what do you make of that, Cian, the way he's transformed his approach?
Yeah, like, to be fair to him, like, that's I didn't see much of him playing. You probably did, but like, that's kind of the way he liked to play as a player, and he was an unbelievable player as well. So look, I to be honest, like, a lot of the time, Galway always have the forwards, and how can you utilize them best? Can you leave 3 up? Like, it was brave to leave 3 up because Donegal have such weapons from the back, and I don't know, maybe you can kind of give a bit more insight to did the Donegal defenders just stay back to mark them, or were they not coming forward as much? Because that's kind of what messes up the shape. And just from maybe you could from being at the game. Yeah,
no, when I was watching it, like, it wasn't always the same. Sometimes I looked at it and a forward would stay up, and like, if a forward from Galway stayed up, a Donegal man was staying back to mind the house. Okay. And probably, like, you remember Galway a couple of years ago, the way they hit Derry on the counter and got that goal from Comer late on. They're obviously, kind of well aware what they're up against there. But there were times when the entire team dropped back, so therefore the entire Donegal team was pushing forward, and you had those sort of patient periods of play going on.
Yeah, and like that was kind of even over the second game as well. I felt there was times where Kerry, could have kicked the ball more, and sometimes they looked up and they had nowhere to go. That's kind of the problem when you bring everyone back. When you bring everyone back, like if you turn the ball over, there's nowhere to go. There's no one up there. So that's why, leaving 3 up and, the new rules should only be a positive. But I suppose you have to be able to kick past the ball as well. And, maybe Donegal don't kick the ball as much as people would like. But, Galway didn't lend itself to that yesterday as well, the way they came off the kickouts. And, Donegal's long distance shooting has been a massive thing for them. And it actually paid off yesterday as well. Like Michael Langan kicked some unbelievable points. I know he miscued one towards the end, but I suppose like Cian O'Neill and the Galway background team, they took away the weapons that the Donegal had for running from deep, and then they lended itself to say, look, if they're going to kick points from distance, maybe they'll only kick 14 or 15, and we'll try to get out because Thompson kicked 2 or 3 as well. So Donegal didn't get the points from the half back line, but they got 7 or 8 maybe from midfield. So it's hard to mark everyone. Even Gallen got 3 from play. The McBear to get 1 as well. So look, it's hard to mark everyone, but Galway just about got out.
Yeah, like when you get to an All-Ireland semi-final, you're going to concede scores. Like the opposition you're up against, they're going to have good players, so you kind of accept that. Afterwards, Jason, Jim McGuinness said, in the first minute, Ryan McHugh was breaking through, had 2 men pulling at him, and he was blown for overcarrying. I don't want to go there. It is what it is. These games can be decided by 1 or 2 moments. We'll take it on the chin. What do you think? Is there any room for a complaint from a Donegal point of view?
There was, like, I had a good view of that incident, and Ryan was absolutely incensed, and he was actually pointing up at the big screen to Brendan Golly to say, "Will you fucking look at it?" But he had no interest at all. Like the Thompson one, as I said earlier, was really kind of 50-50. But overall, I don't think there can be any massive controversial flashpoints. Like Hawkeye was obviously called into play a couple of times, and to the benefit and disappointment of both teams as well. So like it was a good thing that scoring system was in operation. I think there was at least 3 calls yesterday that went to the So those are the tight margins as well. I don't think Donegal could have any complaints with the goal either. If I think it was Killian McDavid that was coming, he just kind of obstructed Patton's view, but there's no real complaints there because I don't think he got a proper touch in the ball. So overall, like from a refereeing point of view, I don't think there can be any major complaints from a Donegal point of view. They can just be unhappy with how they closed out the game and how those shots went wide and so many of them dropped short, and they just totally lost the way of the game plan that they had stuck to so far to get this far. So look, plenty to build on for them for next year, but they will see it as a massive opportunity missed as well. Sorry I dropped out there, lads, too. The power went off. That's what you get for living in South Roscommon. So
Cian, why do you think Armagh got over the line against Kerry?
I don't know. I think, to be honest, the bench made a massive difference. I think the depth that Armagh have built, like Stephen Campbell was unbelievable off the bench. He scored 2 points. Ross McQuillan gave them huge legs off the bench. Charlie O'Byrnes, he won the throw up in extra time, went straight down, got a point. And if you look at the players that Kerry brought off, like Dylan Casey, Mike Breen, Sean O'Brien, Dylan Ganey, like these players have been on the panel, I suppose, for a long time, but they haven't really got game time at that level. So I definitely think the bench made an impact. I think Armagh got it right on the sideline as well, to be honest. I think in extra time when Diarmuid O'Connor and Joe O'Connor had both been subbed off for Kerry, Kerry aren't blessed with big men, and Armagh started going long on the kickouts and they got huge joy off that. And Armagh were ruthless as well on the sideline. Like Aidan Nugent had come on, and like he's been unbelievable off the bench this year for Armagh. It didn't happen for him. He got turned over 2 or 3 times, but they took him back off. And to do that to a player, especially in extra time, is massive. But they brought back on Conor Turbot, and he scored 2 points. So I think Armagh definitely won the battle on the sideline.
And Jason, obviously Donegal would have, your native Donegal would have no love for Armagh, but you've got to give them props here.
Aye, absolutely, Shane. they ruined my mid-teens so many times. But look, you have to hand it to them. Like, getting to an All-Ireland final here is massive. Like, first time in 22 years. And a buddy of mine who's a very astute coach working in the area at the minute said that the biggest difference he thinks is the switch to put Blaine Hughes back in goals. He thinks that's been absolutely massive, and I think it's a very fair point that maybe isn't being made enough, or hasn't really been made from some corners at all. I think that's been an absolute game changer for them. I think he's just been phenomenal. Like, I think he's probably the nailed on all-star for me, if we're honest about it. And I think as well, like, there was the Donaghy factor at the weekend, but I think adding Con McGilligan as a coach to the backroom team as well has really improved them significantly. Like, Con has just got such a wonderful footballing brain. He was a massive part in all of that success in Kilcoo. He took on the job himself after Mickey Moran left, and it didn't quite work out. But Kieran McGinney was very quick to come in and secure his services, and I think his addition has been absolutely crucial to them. And I think a lot of his fingerprints have been seen all over that team in terms of the way that they now close out games, the way they're now so much more composed on the ball, and how more ruthless they are as well. I think that's all been massive. And, I think Conleth's addition there has been huge as well. I didn't get to see much of that game on Saturday, but they just never gave in about Kerry. They never gave in, and they rolled the storm after Kerry kept coming at them and kept butchering so many goal chances and just wore them down. And really, what did Kerry get? 2 points in extra time? That's serious. Like, just when you thought Kerry were going to come back and maybe steamroll them in the Armagh of old, and their failures to close out leading positions would come back to haunt them, it was quite the opposite. They were emphatic and full deserving winners, and they just trampled all over Kerry in the end up, and they were just absolutely fearless. And I thought it was really significant at the final whistle too. McGinney was straight out and went up to nearly every single one of his players, and he was holding up the index finger saying one more. So it was kind of flashbacks to 2002 when he had his team in the huddle before that All-Ireland final against Kerry, and he was rallying the troops. It kind of brought me back to the clips of that. So it'll be a brilliant final, lads, because it'll be two absolute icons managing their teams, and lads who'd been on the chopping block and under pressure kind of over the courses of both managements. There were Galway supporters calling for Joyce's head after last year. Armagh supporters have called for McGinney's head several times, but one of them are going to be coming home with Sam in a couple of weeks. So staying true and staying with them has bore fruits in the end, even if it has taken maybe longer than people would have expected in both counties.
Yeah, and I think Ethan Rafferty won an All-Ireland Intermediate Bowls title over the weekend, so that's an interesting one. But Cian, just your thoughts then on what Jason is saying about Blaine Hughes. What's the difference between having Blaine Hughes, a goalkeeper by trade, versus Ethan Rafferty, who was, obviously an outfielder converted and a forward or midfielder, really dynamic player coming forward. This is supposed to change Gaelic football, but going back the other way, how has that changed them in your opinion? And then you can follow up, Jason, if you like.
Yeah, putting a goalkeeper in goals has improved them. Who would have thought that? But
how has it changed them? How has it, changed their game?
Oh no, I'm just saying in general. Traditionalists for, I've been, you see out lads at club games giving out about keeper coming out over halfway and get back in the goals, whatever. But I suppose have they conceded? That was their third goal to concede over the course of this year on Saturday. I don't know if you can put all that down to Blaine Hughes or if it's just they've improved defensively. But I suppose just the mentality of a goalkeeper. If you're playing in goals your whole life, your primary job is keep the ball out of the net and nail your kickouts. And to be fair to Blaine Hughes, he had always done that, and he was always good at short kickouts. But I suppose, some of the goals that Armagh conceded while Ethan Rafferty was in goals, there was some where there was balls dropping in the square, I remember, against Galway, and he came out maybe past the 14 trying to fist it and didn't get much on it, and then he was out with a goal. So it's just, I suppose, just time in the goals and decision-making and experience of them situations. You can't really buy that, especially if you're an outfield player. And I suppose it's an interesting call. I know Ethan Rafferty had the injury. I wonder, did that just force McGeeney's hand, or was he going to do it anyways? Because Ethan Rafferty did give them a punch going forward. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see which way that went.
And just Jason, as you follow that up, what have they lost in an outfield sense by not having him out there doing what he was doing?
Yeah, like it's an interesting, like, just, obviously, like, you have the Rory Beggins and the Niall Morgans as well. Like, maybe that aspect slightly, but I remember even like being in the press box in Clonus before the Ulster final, like, and talking to a few Armagh supporters and journalists as well. Like, they were kind of torn between which one should have played that day. So the Armagh public were definitely kind of split down the middle on this one. Like, but I think the move back to Blaine has been totally vindicated. In terms of just everything that Cian said there was spot on. Like, having an out-and-out goalkeeper and goals. Like, it was an interesting project. Geezer was obviously trying to think outside the box a wee bit, but like, as you mentioned as well, like those, that quarter-final game against Galway and incidents like that, like, just when that goalkeeping experience really comes up trumps. But I don't think what they've lost has had much of an impact in terms of the switch either, Shane. So I think it's been totally vindicated. Like, Ethan did bring a lot. Like, he didn't soil his bib that much in any sense. But I think they know now that Hughes is the right man to have between the sticks. Like, so it's been totally vindicated for me, and I thought he was brilliant on Saturday too.
And if they ever decide middle of a game we need to change the impetus a little bit or do something, they could always bring him on, I suppose, or they could bring him on outfield. Really Unofficial says, do you think Geezer or Donaghy will move on after the final? Win or lose? Asking for a friend. That looks like a Kildare crest to me. And actually, it's interesting that Cian O'Neill, who's involved in the Galway setup, and Geezer, who was previously involved with Kildare also, are both in finals. And both of them, you could say, were not exactly, heaven and earth wasn't exactly moved to keep them in the county, was it, Jason?
Yeah, it's a funny one. Like, it would have been very interesting to see what would have happened with Kildare, in 2011, say, when Donegal beat them in that All-Ireland quarter-final after extra time, the Kevin Cassidy point. Like, he was really close to making a significant breakthrough then. And then you fast forward to 2018 and the New Bridge or Nowhere kind of impetus that Cian O'Neill brought, and when Mayo were coming to town, and when he was on the 6-1 news rallying the troops, like, it's their downfall since them days has just been absolutely tragic. Like, it's shocking to think that they're in Division 3, and like, their supporters were nearly seemed to have an air about them that they were too good for the Tailteann Cup, but they weren't good enough for the Tailteann Cup. So yeah, I don't know. It's like a lot of people within the county now must be wondering, O'Neill in particular, like, why he wasn't given more time, especially given the underage success that was coming through as well. You have to remember too, like, Davy Burke never got a shot at that job either after all the success he brought at underage level. And the knives were out for him here in Roscommon. I know that firsthand. The knives were out for him here in Roscommon after the league, but that narrative's totally changed again after doing All-Ireland quarter-final, and a game that could have been different as well if Rory Fallon stayed in the pitch. Like, they played half of that game against Armagh with 14 men, took a massive scalp against Tyrone up in Omagh, so they have a lot to look forward to under him as well. And lots of people around here now are hoping that he stays on and builds even more with the Rossies. So he's the third man you can throw into that mix as well.
And like, Kieran McGeeney has had plenty of arrows slung his way over the years, and he was saying in the press conference afterwards, I said this before, most of the criticism comes from past players. It's very rarely a journalist. And then there was also, he was talking about something else in terms of the history of Armagh compared to like Kerry, who've obviously won a huge amount of All-Ireland titles. And this is the 5th All-Ireland final that Armagh will ever have been in. He was the captain for the one title that they won in 2002. They won 14 Ulsters ever, and he was saying basically half of that came from the one crop. And he then said, we have a spectrum that we all exist on. And sometimes what success looks like in one county will not look like what success is in another county. Like, can we really overestimate the achievement of getting Armagh to an All-Ireland final, Cian? Or do we have to say, well, considering that the players that they've had together for this long, it's probably about time that they delivered something for us.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Like, and I suppose if you're going in, like, taking a job and you look, obviously you're not looking for 10 years from the outset, but like, with the backlash in social media and past players and that, it's very hard to last that long. But I suppose there'll be managers, moving on in this off season, and there's, the players meet with the county board and all that, and like sometimes it can be the players who essentially push a manager out. But like anytime you hear any of them Armagh players speak, they all absolutely love him, and like they never put any blame on him for their defeats. And I suppose there's an element they have to say that if he's going to be there, but like the way they speak of him is just unbelievable. And I think, from that game at the weekend, boys, I think Armagh's fitness levels were miles ahead of Kerry. And I know that's easy to say because they finished strong in the extra time, but like Kerry just looked absolutely dead on their feet in the last 15 minutes of normal time, and then the extra time as well. So you have to give them credit for that, because I think if you look at it, like first of all, you would have got some odds on Barry McCambridge outscoring David Clifford from play, and he man marking him. But like Clifford scored his only point from play on the 48th minute, and Kerry had 111 on the board at that point. So then for the next 47 minutes, including the extra time, Kerry only scored 5 points. And I definitely think that had a massive factor in the game. And there was two goal chances where Kerry absolutely butchered just after half time, and they were about 3 points up. So if they had went 6 up, maybe at that stage Armagh would have faltered. There was one where Sean O'Shea was going through, and I felt he should have went himself, especially because you're one of our main players, you're the forward. He went right to Thomas Sullivan and he got bottled up and had to come back out. And there's another one where Thomas Sullivan, I felt he should have went with his right foot, and he went to hook it with the outside of his left and he put it over. So, they're the things that Kerry will be looking back on. But, geez, from a conditioning point of view, I felt Armagh blew Kerry out of the water.
And, I mean, going back a couple of years ago as well, Tyrone beat them after extra time at Croke Park. But what do you think of Kerry, Jason?
I thought they were so disappointing, Shane. You're always kind of waiting for them to come. It's mad to think a week ago they were favourites for the All-Ireland, but, from the 4 semi-finalists, I think they performed the worst, if you have to be honest. The likes of Sean O'Shea, he just looked so bereft of confidence, particularly when they did get into the business end of the season. He kind of looked a shadow of himself, and that's okay. I can't imagine the pressure that's on his shoulders, David Clifford's shoulders, Paddy Clifford's shoulders, even Paul Heaney that's been there soldiering for over a decade. To be a Kerry footballer and the expectancy that comes with it must be massive. You can't cane these boys too much, for being low in confidence at times or maybe drifting in and out of form. But I think that was a massive reason why we're not talking about them now in terms of being into the All-Ireland final. I think the provincial system does nothing for them at this stage, no more than the Dubs. I think they would love to have maybe one or two good, decent battle-hardened games coming into the proper All-Ireland series. Now, I'm taking nothing away from Clare here. Clare gave them a good run for their money for stages, plenty of stages of that game in Ennis when they played them in the Munster final. But, Kerry didn't get much of a test in the All-Ireland group stages either, and they were able to just kind of coast into an All-Ireland quarter-final without really knowing where they were at. Whereas other teams knew what they had to work on and knew where they were at in terms of their strengths and their weaknesses. So I think that kind of all went against them in the long run too. The Derry game did nothing for them either. It was an absolute stinker. It was, I felt like handing them me notice afterwards, to be honest. It was just so bad. It was just so bad especially when you compared it to what happened the night before when Galway took out the Dubs. So that game didn't do anything for them either. So they were just kind of limping into the semi-final, and it was kind of prime for them really in hindsight for them to kind of crumble, and that's what happened. But in fairness to Jack O'Connor, they did do a lot right. There was a lot of concerns about Kerry's midfield, and I think with more development, that partnership of the two O'Connors, Jeremy and Joe, will definitely come up and bear fruits to be a really formidable partnership. Because when David Moran left the scene a couple of years ago, it left such a massive void. And it's okay for David Clifford and Sean O'Shea and these boys to go off form, given that the magic they've produced in the last couple of years. But the fact that your players like that aren't firing really kind of took away from Kerry. And leading up to the weekend as well, a lot of the other lads had really taken up the scoring mantle, like Paul Murphy, Tom Sullivan, Brian O'Bugley, Gavin White, Tyke Marley. All these boys were all getting on the score sheet, and that was great. But at the end of the day, you need David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, and your main target men to really, really be firing when it gets to the stage of the championship, and that just didn't happen.
I was saying before the semi-final, Keane, I was saying to Vernie the other day that if you have a forward line, and I accept that it's a fairly physical midfield with Diarmuid O'Connor and Joe O'Connor, but like if you have a forward line with Tony Brosnan, Paddy Clifford, Darragh Moynihan, David Clifford, Sean O'Shea and Paul Ganey, I was saying, where's your physicality going to be? Like, they're all good players and they're able to look after themselves, but are they going to be able to impose themselves on the units that Armagh have? And I sort of thought, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, and like Armagh players, you see them, they're busting out the jerseys like they are animals of men. But like, I think Paddy Clifford and Sean O'Shea actually got a good bit of space in the first half, and they weren't essentially man-marked. But then Aaron McKay really stood up and nullified Paddy Clifford. I think Sean O'Shea went out with it as well, and even David. Like, I don't know. I think he had a mark. He had 2 frees and then 1 point from play. But I would say, geez, I haven't seen every Kerry game, but I would say that's probably the least shots he's had at the post in a game in a long time. Because even if like any game he plays, he definitely gets 7 or 8 shots at least. Whether he scores them or not is a different story. Even the All-Ireland final last year, he had 3 from play and maybe 4 or 5 wide. So like, you have to give credit to Armagh's defence for taking him out. But look, it's a difficult one. I think, as Jason was alluding to there, playing against them teams in the round robin done them absolutely no favours, because if you look at the teams they played, Louth absolutely parked the bus, Meath absolutely parked the bus, and so did Monaghan. And then they face a similar team then in Derry in the quarter-final. I'd say they are sick of doing that in training, just trying to break down 15 behind the ball, going over and back, just conservative play. And I think that actually ended up stinging them in the end, because that game was stretched in the end. There was loads of space in the extra time when bodies were getting tired. And I felt Kerry boys were actually turning down kick passes. And there'll be lads down in Kerry turning in their grave at that Armagh kicking the ball more than Kerry. But I felt in the second half and in extra time, when Killian Spillane came on, he was out in front and he had separation from his man, and Kerry players actually turned and hand passed it sideways rather than kicking the ball. And I think that'll really sting the Kerry management team and Kerry fans, because Kerry are seen as the home of football and they love to kick the ball. And I definitely think, towards the end of that game, they turned down big opportunities.
So, like, in a way, were they afraid to play their own brand of football? And, like, when we look at Clifford, has he just maybe played too much football in the last couple of years? Fossa obviously had that long run that ended in, I think it was January 2023, and obviously they continued on. Like we've seen a few big games where it just hasn't happened for him in the last year. Like, we all think he's absolutely class, don't get me wrong, but Keane, he doesn't seem to be himself in the last while, and plenty of big games.
Yeah, no, like, he hasn't got going at all this year, if you're being honest about it. Like, he scored a couple of goals against Meath there in the round robin, but apart from that, he's been a couple of points in play nearly in every game. And yeah, I don't know, like, is it just I know he's only 25, but like, this was his 7th year playing senior inter-county, and I think this will probably be the 2nd year he won't get an all-star. Like, the only year he hasn't got one so far was the COVID year where they had lost to Cork, and if there had been a backdoor that year, he probably would have got one. So yeah, look, I don't know. It is difficult for him, like the way teams set up against Kerry, and it's just like Barry McCambridge, like, he never gave him a second. Like, it is difficult when there's so much attention on you. And I think when you haven't, like, when you're not involved in the game and you haven't touched the ball, if you go 10, 12 minutes without touching the ball, all of a sudden the next time you get the ball, you think you have to do something here because you mightn't see it again. And I think sometimes he does force it a little bit. And I know sometimes he can score from mad distances and angles, but there was certainly a couple of times where he got the ball and maybe he was off balance shooting and he ends up absolutely skying it, or he just takes the wrong option a little bit. And, I know he's used to it, but geez, like, if you're playing on the field and you haven't touched the ball in so long, I suppose that's where you just need to decision-making and maturity and just, pass it on. But it's so hard to do. Like, I know myself as playing as a forward, if you haven't touched the ball in so long, the next time you get it, you think, I have to get a shot off now because I'm not going to see this ball for another 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So it's difficult.
And then, Jason, afterwards, Jack O'Connor was talking basically about the crowd and how Armagh were driven on and outnumbered and all that kind of stuff. Would you buy into any of that, or would you just say, look, you just weren't as good as Armagh, simple as?
There's definitely an element to it, Shane. Apologies if my connection's gone down now because I have no fucking Wi-Fi. But am I gone?
No, stay going, Jason. You're all good. We must, Jason possibly can't hear us there. But yeah, again, like you can't buy into that whole thing. I mean, isn't the whole thing that you're supposed to be able to rise above the sort of atmosphere? I know it can help you or whatever, but it's not an excuse. Maybe I'm just being hard on Kerry because I don't like the stuff they play, and I think they're underperforming. Plus, I think they're, in terms of the quality they have, I think, and this isn't their fault, I think they've been overrated somewhat.
Yeah, maybe so. Like to be honest, I would have seen them. I said it there last week. Like I would have thought they were number one going into this weekend. I just thought they had that bit of experience, and to be honest, I thought Armagh wouldn't. I thought Armagh were not going to be as brave as they were. I thought Armagh were going to be a small bit more conservative. But to be fair to Armagh, they really went after it, and I suppose they had to. Like it was all or nothing really, a semi-final. But I suppose the way they played against Roscommon didn't really inspire me with much confidence, especially when Roscommon had a man down for nearly the whole second half, and just the way they played. But to be fair to them, they really went after Kerry, and yeah, like it's hard to know where Kerry go from here, like because it's like how different is that Kerry team going to be next year personnel wise, I don't think there's going to be too many changes, and then are they going to change their style of play? Jack O'Connor would probably be there next year, will he?
I'd assume so. I can't imagine he'd want to walk away after that.
Yeah.
And also losing to, geez, I don't know, do you think it kind of sits poorly, losing to, Armagh when they've got maybe Kieran Donaghy involved? And not that there'd be anything personal, but just walking away on that tone, on that note, I don't know if they'd like that.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, like I suppose if you lose to Dublin or maybe Mayo or whatever, but no disrespect to Armagh, but Kerry would see themselves as a bit higher than that. But yeah, I was listening to Kieran Donaghy's interview there after the game, and he was saying that, like, as the final whistle went, he caught eyes with some of his club mates, like from Kerry, and they were distraught, and it's just so difficult for him. Like he was nearly, obviously he was delighted Armagh won, but like he was nearly always distraught in another way. And I don't know, like, what do you think of that? Like, what do you think of like going to a different county as a selector or manager and trying to leave it behind you? Like, what would you make of it now if like someone from Tip went to Kilkenny like and won All Ireland?
Well, you're talking about a lad who had to, in his first championship match as manager last year, had to manage against Coola that he played for like 15 years. So,
jeez, right? How did that go?
Oh, like I think it was one of those things where everyone on the other side knows it's not personal, and when you spend 6 or 8 months preparing a team for a match, you sort of get into this whole thing of you've got a crew together and you're trying to achieve something, and it's not personal. And I think everyone on both sides kind of realizes that. And I'd say it's the same for Donaghy as well. Like, it's not personal. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I suppose it's just so hard if like his wife, he was saying his wife and kids and that were even kind of thinking about supporting Armagh or whatever. But yeah, no, like when a team, you're going up against your own club mates, like it's so difficult in that sense because you have to go back there then, and like to be honest, like Kieran Donaghy's going to end up in the Kerry management team at some stage, surely. Like, even I don't know, like what? How did Armagh even rope him in? Like, that's some journey for 3 times a week.
Yeah,
he's been up there nearly 4 years now. Like, so
yeah, incredible that he's kept that going. Come here, just the final game we'll talk about was Laois coming up a little bit short against Down in the Tailteann Cup final. It finished 14 points to 2-6. It looked like Down had it totally, in the bag. And then Mark Barry scored that unbelievable goal from about 21 yards out, rocket into the roof of the net. Now, I would say maybe the keeper could have our defender could have done something about that. But even so, it was just great to see the roof of the net smashed from that distance. What did you make of the game, and what do you make it down?
Yeah, I actually didn't see this. I only caught the highlight package, and it actually, I never like doing that because I always think the highlights never reflect the game in any, well, not in any sport. I suppose soccer and GAA mostly what I watch, but I don't think it reflects it at all. But it came across in the highlights that Down probably were comfortable and had Laois at arm's length. I don't know if that was the real story of the game or not, but
I felt that Down were comfortably for a lot of the second half the better team, and it looked like they had them at arm's length. And like Oran Murdoch was very impressive. Danny McGill, he came on, he was very impressive. Sheelan Johnson, Ryan Johnson, like Quayle Mooney came off the bench, he also got a point. So they got a great impact from their bench. And then it was just a little bit of panic stations at the end, and Mark Barry scored that brilliant goal. Then a minute or two later, going into injury time, with it just back to 2 points, he had a fairly routine chance for a point for him, missed it, And that kind of allowed that 2-point buffer when it was going to be difficult to score another goal with a packed box.
Yeah.
And if they had to knock that over, they might have got to extra time, even though it felt like Down were comfortably the better team. But yeah, that would have been my thought on it.
Yeah, and like even that goal from Mark Barry, like you never see that, from general play. Like you're not trying that in the first half, in the second half. You're not trying that even if you're 2 or 3 points down with a few minutes to go. Like you only see that when it's desperation. Like, so that's the disappointing thing that everyone was it kind of went a bit viral there, and everyone was saying, "Geez, we need to see more of this." Like, but sure, if you start doing that, like when the games, in the melting pot, or with 10 minutes to go, like you're going to be getting whipped fairly soon. But I suppose it was important for Down to finally win it, because it felt like Down have been the favourites for the Tailteann Cup since it started. Like every year they're going to win it, but it feels like a lifetime ago they nearly beat Armagh, like in the championship. So it's mad the way it goes, and you have to give credit to Laois as well for kind of salvaging something out of their year, because when Justin McNulty came in, they were such a low place from last year, from conceding the 8 goals to Down in the same venue. So they got promotion, and they won a few games weren't expected to win, like even beating Kildare and that. So they only lost by 2 in the end. So it was a positive year for them, and Down, at least they have their ticket into Sam next year. They won't have to worry about the league, and hopefully they can push on.
And it's funny, like when you think of Laois's performance against New York there several weeks ago at this stage, didn't exactly blow us away. But Conor Laverty said afterwards, "I can't say winning this was the main objective at the start of the year, because we had real ambitions of getting to an Ulster final and competing for the Sam Maguire Cup. But after the Armagh game, we refocused together, we took a few weeks off, and we decided we were going to give this competition everything we had. Going into Division 2 next year, the pressure of not knowing if you had Sam Maguire Cup football secured, and looking over your shoulder all the time and waiting on provincial draws and wondering how they would work out, wondering where you're going to be in Sam Maguire football, we've avoided all of that." So it is based on those factors there. It is a huge victory for them, even though it's a secondary competition.
Yeah, like, and even next year when they're planning for their pre-season or their league, like they don't have to go worrying about going hard for league matches or trying to be in Sam and all that. They know from the outset that they can get prepared for 3 round-robin games against teams that are going to be at a higher level than them. And, can they get to that level? Can they win a couple of games? Because, like, Meath knew that this year, and Meath never fired a shot in the round-robin. So, like, I suppose I'm happy for Conor Laverty. Like, he comes across well in any of the interviews, and he's not too long out of that setup either. And, he's still playing club football. So, he seems to have the respect of them. And, a lot of the Down players could have went, out to America or whatever after they were in the Tailteann Cup. And he seems to have kept them all together. So, yeah, no, it's a positive for Down. And, hopefully they can make an impact next year. Because we need more teams, like, trying to get out with them round robins, because a lot of it this year, it was at Meath, like Clare, some teams like that never even looked like winning a game. So hopefully Down can, put up to some teams next year.
Okay, final thing then, go to the week. Who would that be for you?
Go to the week. Who will I go for? I'll go for Conor Turbot, because he's been really good all year. Didn't really happen for him, got sub, but then came back on, which I don't know how you get yourself into that kind of mentality, because once you're off, you're like, Jesus, I'm after missing the opportunity now. But he came back on and scored 2 points to get them over the line. So go for Conor Turbot.
I'll give it to Oran Murdoch of Down. I thought he was really, really impressive in the Tailteann Cup final. Right, that's it from the show this week. A reminder, we've got a live show coming up in Scariff, County Clare later this week. So you can check that QR code and buy tickets for that if you'd like to go. It's only €15, which I think is very, very reasonable. Cian, thank you very much. We'll chat to you again soon.
Cheers, Shane.